In fact, Clint Boyd from Saltwater Markets, they have 3 different locations across the area. We're going to bring in to talk about House Bill 442. This man was a fisherman. He now has a retail shop for seafood himself. As I said, 3 different locations, Clover, Fort Mill, and Gastonia. So obviously he knows a lot about fishing, and then knows some of the fishermen who are stocking his shelves as well. So let's bring in Clint. Clint, it's great to have you. I appreciate your time, my friend. I hope your family's doing well also. And thanks so much for doing this on a moment's notice. But I saw your picture. I know how many fishermen you know and how many fishermen help out your business. Businesses across the Eastern Seaboard as well. And this legislation is moving through the General Assembly. And it looks like it's got some interesting nuances that have actually been changed today. But let's just get the background in your perspective, what this bill looks like. It's titled the Flounder, Red Snapper Seasons and Shrimp Trawl Act, and it began as an effort to restore recreational flounder and red snapper seasons and then increase the fish population. But it's going to head back to the House Wednesday, July 25th, after some significant changes. So we were talking a little bit earlier about this. In your perspective and some of the fishermen's perspective that you've spoken with, how do they feel about this, and how is this going to change the industry for everyone?
Thanks for having me, Colin. Really, the reason that busloads, of refrigerated trucks full of fishermen went to Raleigh today, the reason for their outrage is not the reason that we would all think on face value. It has to do with the political process that's truly been abandoned on this bill. This bill started off a collaborative bill that was brought forward in a proper way where the public, the constituency, had a chance to voice their opinions, their concerns. Commercial and recreational fishermen got to build this bill, and it was giving access to things like flounder and red snapper, which is good. And it's a short season. There was no flounder season to speak of last year. And so that was all a good thing. It was going to pass, and it had the support of everyone. What I think most of the public won't know is that the same folks who have brought forward this amendment that eventually made it and was added on the 9th hour are the same folks who want to do away with the protection of the coastal marshlands, and they want to fill in and develop 250 million acres of North Carolina coastline. So they do it under the guise, this amendment, which if folks don't know, this amendment bans trawling, which is effectively banning shrimping on the North Carolina coast inshore, half a mile in. And so on face value, they sell it as, hey, we're going to really protect the estuaries in the backwater, and we're going to make sure that the resource is protected. We don't want to damage the ocean floor. And I can speak to all of that, and it is truly a non-issue. What they may not know is that in 2022, they ordered for research to be done to find out the effects of commercial fishing, and those results are planning to be presented to this body in mere days. They knew that, and the same folks who want to develop this marshland snuck in this amendment to ban trawling. Effectively, they just want to destroy the working waterfront of North Carolina or all of the East Coast, and what is a fishery that has been under pressure of imports and overregulation for years and years and years, already struggling. That's what's happened, is sneaky backdoor politics like so many of us have come to really despise.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because the co-sponsors, at least, they're saying this stems from mounting concerns over North Carolina's declining inshore fish stocks, which is what you kind of alluded to. But the assessments by the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries and the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission show significant drops in these key populations. So obviously there's a concern, of overfishing, and it seems like it started out as that, but these amendments are kind of packed in. And we've seen this at the federal level too, right? In this budget bill, in the 11th hour, trying to pass certain things, whether you agree or not. It is a tough situation to put these lawmakers in to try and read all of that. And then if folks aren't as well versed on some of this, it could get passed, right, and affect certain populations and certain industries, which it seems like this could if it does obviously pass. What are we looking at in terms of changes if this does pass and development comes to pass on this type of land? Sounds like it would just decimate, right, the entire industry and really hurt places like saltwater markets and other places that sell this type of fresh fish.
Yeah, it would. So our primary shrimp supply is in South Carolina. So a lot of folks have asked me, why are you worried about it? Well, uh, it immediately wouldn't it hurt me because South Carolina, contrary to what you've heard on the news, does allow inshore fishing inside of a half a mile and all the places that matter. But what will really happen is it will set precedent. So it makes it much easier for this to continue down the coastline. The change that you would see is essentially you're trading in good food, the God given resource that we have in Carolina. And I do not know of a more cost effective premium protein available as a resource in our state. You are effectively eliminating it. These fishermen that they say that they can just give some of the taxpayers' dollars to help them as they're affected by this bill if it passes, they will not simply be able to steam a little farther out to shrimp, uh, especially in like the Outer Banks areas. To get more than a half a mile from shore may mean steaming 5, 6 hours for a lot of these fishermen. So what will happen is 70 to 80% of the shrimp production in North Carolina will cease to be. And you are essentially saying, I would like to have a ton of housing development and high rises in exchange for the good food that we've been giving and the hardworking waterfront working men that are there. And I'll just eat imported shrimp. That's the deal. And it's not the way it's being sold to the American public.
Interesting, interesting, and obviously we're not privy to the backdoor negotiate or the backroom negotiations that are ongoing. But I mean, proponents. I just want to bring this up, including Tim Gistwicki. He's the CEO of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, kind of agreeing with what you're saying, that he argues inshore shrimp trawling is a primary culprit in the decline of inshore fish stocks. So it seems like, right, people need to wrap their head around what's actually happening, and trying to find the actual problem here, which seems to be what you're kind of speaking on. So how does the state align? Because North Carolina is the only state in the country that really still allows this practice in inland waters. Is that a good or bad thing? And then how do we align ourselves with other states? Is that a good thing in your estimation as well?
Yeah, so that is a great question because there's some misinformation. When I watched the when I watched this hearing where this was presented, they said that, and it just plain isn't true. South Carolina allows it, and you look at the map; it isn't a simple map. They've already been bumped out where some of the high rises are and things like that, the more developed areas. But they are allowed inside of a half a mile. Like every year, you see me, Colin. I go down and I am super fired up for the opening of the beaches in Carolina because it's when I can get a ton of shrimp. It's when my guys can work. They're all fired up and excited for it. And so it is allowed in Carolina. It's allowed in Texas. It's allowed in Louisiana. It's allowed in a lot of places where it matters. And boats are, and the reason for that is the local infrastructure. It doesn't take just your general observation when you go to the coastline. You'll see a huge difference in the infrastructure of our working waterfront and say the West Coast or even New England. We are clearly under so much regulation in the southeastern corridor that it has been undercapitalized for years. And I think when it comes to folks who say that shrimping is responsible for the decline of a lot of these inshore fisheries, that just plain isn't true either. The analogy I would make is, you ever go to the beach and build a sandcastle, Colin? Yeah, one tide change. What happened to your sandcastle?
It's gone. Yeah.
It's back to like it was. So our God-given resources are incredible. We are not tearing down rainforest. We're not developing, and I would argue that's what's really making the decline of these fisheries. We're not developing and producing industrial runoff into these areas by shrimping. But the development is the same people who are producing this amendment want that. That is absolutely killing fisheries. But instead, we are raking sand and mud. And there is tremendous research, in fact, research that will be presented in only days now, which I think is why this amendment was added when it was, that shows that when you cultivate the ocean floor, you drag through the sand, you turn over nutrients in this. And when you go back and study what happened after you did it, it's like you planted a garden. There's food for all these fisheries. This is where the flounder would thrive. And so I just think it's an absolute farce that any of the trawling is damaging that. In fact, I think it's already an overreach, and there'd be a lot of opportunity with special permitting in some of the backwaters of Carolina that aren't currently allowed.
Very interesting. And we did ask one of the co-sponsors of this original bill, Representative McNeely from Iredell County, to come on today to give some comments about, what his ideas were from the initial bill. I know this new amendment added to this. There's other representatives who are involved in this. So we will be reaching out to them to see, their thoughts as well. Clint, I guess the last thing that I have to ask you, or the second to last thing, is what is the best route here, that obviously this doesn't pass the House or Senate and just kind of goes away, but I don't know, it seems like so many people are invested in this situation that may not be the likely case.
Right.
What are you guys, what are fishermen preparing for? And obviously you're talking about this, this presentation that really does have a lot of statistics that could swing things one way or the other, but you're just sitting on pins and needles right now. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I am for my friends. Like I say, I won't be directly affected. Okay, I've got access. I'm blessed to have access to tremendous fisheries across the nation, and my shrimp are predominantly coming from Carolina. We're super. I mean, we're super fortunate. But these are my friends. And Colin, imagine if you earned $100 a week or a couple hundred, and you didn't have a home, and you lived on the boat, and you were still willing to fight this hard for your job, for your lifestyle, your way of life. That's where these folks are. And so, yeah, I am on pins and needles for them for sure. And the precedent that it could set is bad for our state. I mean, we already see things like Georgetown, that's a centuries long standing of working waterfront that's now being developed. And it is what it is. There's progress, a word that's often misused, that happens, but I do not want to see it at the expense of folks who are producing unbelievable food for all of us, with an unbelievable God-given resource. So, well, I think what folks can do, call your representatives, tell them what you think, and I think most of all, research these topics and don't take them on face value. If anybody who is a fisherman or invested and involved in these topics were to sit in that hearing where this amendment was brought forth, they would all say no one in that room knew anything about fisheries to speak of, and that's a travesty. They would have if
Absolutely.
they had time. If they had had time to go through the normal process, they would have learned. Like you say, it's a lot to ask of lawmakers.
Right. You want to get your mind around the entire problem, right? Especially if it's an
That's
industry
right.
that brings in as much as fishing and obviously having seafood to North Carolina. It's a critical piece. It really is, and I know it's critical for your business as well in a sense of having that fresh quality, which is why we asked you to give your perspective. So again, we will continue to reach out to the other side to see the co-sponsors of this House Bill 442 will come and join us and give us their thoughts. But Clint, thank you so much. My last question for you is, sir, what else are we missing? What else should folks who are hearing this, our viewers who are going to stream this in the days, the weeks to come, because I'd love to bring you back or maybe have a fisherman on once some of those statistics and that presentation is given in Raleigh. We'd love to talk more about that. But for now, what else can we tell folks that maybe I missed?
I have droves of fishermen friends who would love nothing more than to walk you around their boat and show you all of the environmentally friendly tools that have been added to their boats over the last 40 years. They would love nothing more than to show you the catch, the amount of impact it has, and just how environmentally friendly they already are.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on that, man. I hear you. And I think, what we need to do maybe is slap a GoPro on one of your fishermen and, we'll go out, ride with them. But Clint, thank you so much for your time. Again, Clint owns with his wife Saltwater Markets. They have 3 different locations, which you can always go and check out and support, our local fishermen. We got to have them. So Clint, great to have you again on WCNC Plus. I hope you come back and join us. You are a great interviewee, by the way.
Always a privilege. Thanks so much, Colin.
All right. Tell Elizabeth and the family I said hi.